everyone, this is Maki. Today, let's dive into the discussion of the stuff involved in the Gundam SEED series. This is a continuation of the introduction to the talk show with director Mitsuo Fukuda and mechanics design team leader Satoshi Shigeta that we shared earlier. They touched on topics such as mechanics color design and even Cal-re. What did they talk about? Let's take a closer look. First question. What do you all think are the key features of the SEED series? That's the question. What do you think defines the SEED series? Could it be the iconic pose of a mobile suit holding a beam rifle? These are the kinds of elements they discussed. Fukuda was the first to speak. If the production staff ever asked a question like that, we would be furious, he said. Everyone, including Mr. Fukuda, burst out laughing. Then Mr. Susumu Fuji of the CGI team spoke with a smile. When the production of SEED Freedom began, I asked the same question and was scolded for it. Mr. Shigeta added to the conversation. We didn't set out to make something with SEED-like qualities. If fans feel that way, we're happy to hear it. But at the end of the day, we just want to make something that looks great on screen. Hiromi Ikeya, director of production progress, also weighed in. Some of the new staff who watched the older SEED series may have certain scenes deeply engraved in their minds. Fukuda concluded with his thoughts. As production staff, we must challenge ourselves to create something new. If we set our goal to make something that feels SEED-like, the work would stop evolving. It's important for the crew to have the mindset of exploring the future of the show together. The conversation turned to the philosophy of the production team. In a way, their answer to the question was that the constant pursuit of new expressions and evolution is what defines the essence of the SEED series. Of course, this mindset is not limited to Gundam. It is a common element in many creative endeavors. What's particularly interesting is how they talked about how sticking too closely to the idea of SEED-like could prevent evolution. Did you notice that it's somewhat similar to the Destiny Plan from the SEED series itself? The Destiny Plan is a concept where a person's role is determined by their genetics. It's a classic example of a dystopian ideology that you often see in fictional worlds. Perhaps it's a reflection of how humans, if they are not careful, can easily fall into the trap of fitting into something like the Destiny Plan. Mr. Shigeta talked about the SEED pose, the iconic stance of a mobile suit holding a beam rifle. I didn't specifically aim for the SEED pose during production. It was just a result of trying to create a scene that highlighted the shape of the mobile suit. I imagine similar things happen in other robot anime. Mr. Ikeya also commented. The scene in which Freedom Gundam appears seems to have made a strong impression on many viewers. This pose is often used by model builders who like to recreate it. Shigeta went on to talk about Freedom Gundam. I have often heard people say that the red particles emitted by Freedom Gundam look cool. This opinion doesn't just come from fans, but also from people in the anime production industry. The reason for the red particles is actually quite simple. The background was a blue sky, and since Freedom Gundam's wings are also blue, we decided to make the particles red so that they'd stand out. If we'd used blue particles, they would have been hard to see. I think the technical explanation came later, but at the time of production, there wasn't any deeper meaning to the red light. This idea of deliberately using color to enhance the visuals is something that is shared with the original Gundam. Charles Noble, the ace pilot nicknamed Red Comet, flies a mobile suit that, upon closer inspection, is actually more pink than red. Why did they choose that color? It was to make sure that when Charles' uniform appeared on screen next to his mobile suit, they wouldn't blend together. By painting the mobile suit a pinkish color, they could visually distinguish it from Char's uniform. If they were the same color, the scene where Char is standing in front of the cockpit would lose clarity because the colors would merge. The red particles of Freedom Gundam were created for the same reason. Of course, this doesn't mean that the staff ignored the technical settings. They simply prioritized the ideal visual expression without being bound by the existing lore. The mechanical setting that explains the red particles as excess energy released by the nuclear engine was something that the mechanical design team worked on seriously later. Mr. Shigito shared more insights about the color settings. There are other stories related to color as well. For example, the beam saber of the Aegis Gundam is yellow because the body of the Aegis is red. If we had given it a red or pink saber, it would have been difficult to distinguish the colors. It seems that the mechanics design staff later came up with the idea that the Aegis beam saber is powerful, so it's yellow, but during the animation production, we didn't think about those details. Fukuda also talked about the use of color. We made an effort to change the colors of beams and projectiles as much as possible. Personally, I thought the depiction of the linear gun was a mistake when I first saw it because the animation made it look too similar to beam weapons. At the time the TV animation was made, we didn't have the luxury of correcting this in detail. But in the remastered version, it was one of the first things we fixed. Shigito also addressed the linear gun. If we were to strictly pursue the realism of linear guns, it would be wrong in a way. The bullets from a linear gun would not leave a yellow trail. Our mission is to achieve the ideal visual expression for an anime. Mr. Fujita shared some details about the animation of Seed Freedom. I'm not sure if viewers have noticed yet, but we actually changed the way the weapons are displayed depending on whether the scene takes place on Earth or in space. For example, the linear gun gives off a lot of smoke and sparks on Earth, but there's no smoke in space. Hearing this talk about bullets seemed to remind Mr. Fukuda of something. Now that you mention it, I once noticed while watching the Seed Freedom footage that the beam cannon in one scene was slower than the Vulcan cannon. We generally try to match the speed of each type of projectile to the type of weapon. Fujita replied, sounding nervous. Please point out the scene where the beam cannon flies slower than the Vulcan cannon. When this recording is finished, this definitely needs to be corrected. Currently, the Seed Freedom footage available online has not been fixed. It might be fun to try to find the scene where the beam cannon flies slower than the Vulcan cannon. Fukuda also talked about space battles. A professor friend of mine once told me there are a lot of inaccuracies in the way the movement in space is depicted, and that made me a little frustrated. So for Seed Freedom, I made sure to add a scene that focused on the pursuit of realism in space movement. An example of this is the scene where the Black Knight Squad and the Destiny Gundam pass each other in space. Mr. Shigita also shared his thoughts. There are times when looking at a giant Gundam statue makes everything feel a little surreal. After all, an 18-meter tall robot that moves like a human is far from realistic. But it's also an exciting experience to follow visually entertaining scenes in animation. Especially in the first half of the story, the night battle scenes were designed with the excitement of model building and Diamas in mind. I love to see Diama enthusiasts take up the challenge of recreating these scenes. A fun question has come in. It's about the scene at the end of the movie where Cal-re and Aslan are reunited. The Owashi striker flies in the scene, but could it be that Cal-re brought it as a weapon to scold Aslan? Let me clarify one detail here. The term Owashi is used in this program, but the Owashi is actually the backpack used by the Akatsuki. The one that appears at the end of the movie is the Cal-re. Since their names are similar, it's easy to confuse them. Mr. Fukuda shared his thoughts. Originally, the Cal-re was supposed to die with the Cavalier. But halfway through, we realized that the connection points didn't match. I felt that was a failure, so we decided not to proceed with the docking. Mr. Shigita asked, wasn't it possible to come up with a new setting that would allow them to be combined? Fukuda replied, forcing them together would have made the design look awkward, so we dropped the idea. In the end, the Cal-re flew under the assumption that Cal-re would use it. In retrospect, if we had added some sort of attachment, they might have been able to dock. It seems that the Cal-re was prepared just in case Cal-re had to join the battle. It's interesting to consider that the old military expected Cal-re, the Queen of War, to join the battle. Strike Rouge is, after all, a very old mobile suit. Even though it's an improved version of the Strike Gundam, it's still quite weak compared to more modern mobile suits. For example, the G8TX series was designed to handle multiple beam weapons at the same time. In the final battle, the dual Gundam's use of two beam sabers simultaneously was an unexpected fighting style. The Cavalier, on the other hand, is equipped with several large beam cannons. Not only that, but it's also capable of ultra-long-range quantum communication. Quantum communication requires an immense amount of energy. The powerful and advanced Dragoon systems used by powerful mobile suits such as Providence Gundam, Legend Gundam, and Strike Freedom Gundam are made possible by their nuclear engines. The Strike Rouge's ability to power the Cavalier, which is capable of communicating over long distances with almost zero time lag compared to the Dragoon system, is truly astounding. So it's natural to assume that some upgrades were made to Strike Rouge to accommodate the Cavalier. What kind of upgrades could they have made? Imagining the possibilities is part of the fun. That concludes the third talk show. It seems that the fourth episode will be released soon, and I plan to introduce it on my show as well. Thank you for watching to the end. See you next time.